And we're back. Hey everyone, it's Alicia Brashay here from Cosmic Gateway, and I am joined by the one and only Jo from Awakening to the Light Within. And yes, we have Luna in the background who wants to make her presence known. Welcome. We're going to do a little bit of an update. I don't even know what to call this. This may turn into Cosmic Gateway After Dark. Let's wait and see. I'm not really sure. Geez, I guess it's coming up to 2 months since I felt the call to sit down and record and go over insights and what's been coming through in sessions and talk about energetic climate and just everything that's going on. Because personally for me, and I don't know if you all agree with me, Jo, there's just an influx of overload of information. And it has been a period of time, I know for me and for a lot of people, where the need to kind of pull back and step back, just to be in your own energetic space, to be, not infiltrated by 100 million one things that are going on in the world right now. So it's nice to be back, actually. I have to say it's nice to be back and to talk about. So I guess we've got a lot to go through, because this video has been in the making for quite some weeks now. There's just been so much going on. How are you, Jo?
Well, it depends on what version of me you ask, on what day. It's I think it's been batshit fucking crazy. There has just been so much going on. I mean, like you say, it's been a couple of months, and we talk all the time. We talk regularly. Like you, I went through a phase whereby I had to withdraw from social media. Since lockdowns have kind of taken over across the world, actually, people's responses to that have been multiple and varied. And I know I'm trying to be so good, and there's been this massive kind of push pull that I felt going on a lot of the time. I know that so many people that are used to kind of having a lot of clarity and all the rest of it, a lot of us just got switched off, and that was a bit like, the fuck's going on here? It's just, we're just thoroughly switched off. And
I think to our own advantage, because I know that for many people who are watching this, and obviously for you and I, when you are so energetically sensitive with so much that's going on, I think if we were ever going to be switched off to our full senses, now would be the preferable time, really.
Yeah, most definitely. There's been, we talk about collective energies a lot. There's obviously always a variant amount of different energies going on, but actually the collective energy through this time of absolute mindfuckery and uncertainty has at times been incredibly sludgy and dense and gunky and funky and murky. And I think that, for a lot of people's own benefits, we've been switched off to a lot of that. However, if you're empathic, if you're intuitive, and if you're kind and compassionate, and all of a sudden you're just like, I just don't even care, it can feel really quite challenging. Because all of a sudden you go from being this loving, caring person to literally just being like, yeah, whatever. And it again, that brings about its own challenges. But I think in this phase, and I know you feel the same, and I'm sure there's a lot of other people that would feel the same, is that it tends to be that in sessions we do gain a lot of clarity about why those things are happening and what's actually going on. And it does make you then go, oh, okay, I've just not turned into, this mean mofo, basically.
Yeah,
so totally desensitized.
I think perfect. Doing energy work and working with clients and doing sessions through this time has been a saving grace. And I do want to just thank all the clients and all the people who come and book sessions, because not only are we able to assist them through whatever they're facing at that time, but sometimes there'll be a lot of collective energy information that comes through with that helps us piece together and make sense of what's going through, so that we can bring more information and to larger platforms. I know that there's been a lot of common threads. I know probably, God, it's been so long, but there was a lot of common threads that I was seeing for a period of a few weeks there, where the energy that I was working on people's core blueprint or soul imprint of. So if you think about, prior to our incarnation, we set out our, we kind of write our soul contracts. We write out our, not a loose, but talking about how our life's going to go, what we're going to achieve, what challenges we're going to overcome, all those sorts of things is what I define as the soul blueprint. It's the outline of the incarnation. And of course, when you look at, you come in here and you forget, right? And the whole purpose of the awakening and ascension is to remember and then get on with the plan. And what I've been seeing a lot in sessions are people being stripped back to anything that is not in alignment with their soul blueprint. So in essence, anything that may have been of their free will to deviate from their path, to go down different rabbit holes as we do, all that's kind of being stripped away and narrowed back down. And it's often where I like to see the ascension timeline is all those doors sort of close in, so that we path on the highest and most important timeline for us and for humanity, and how that intersects. So it's been really insightful to see how that has been a theme for so many people, and I think for humanity as a whole, like getting really clear on what's the most important thing and what you're here to do, and either heal from that, go through your own internal process, or get on with it wherever you lay in the spectrum of things. So seeing a lot of that has been a trend, 100%. And I think one important thing to know is that when that's happening, quite often people are being faced with their deepest fears and challenges to get to that energetic signature at that energetic point. And I think we were just discussing before we hit record, a lot of past life stuff has been quite prevalent as well, in correlation to, end of times and apocalyptic sort of craziness, and how many civilizations have gone through that and not had a necessarily a positive outcome, where this time was different. So a lot of people have, a lot of fears around that have been coming up if people have that soul memory tapped into those other civilizations. So what's been really prevalent for you in your
so when you said about the past lives, I think in the last, because it's come in different waves of different things that's come up at different times, there has been a consistent theme that's probably run over the last 2 months in BQH sessions, and that's been around a lot of what's going on now and the distortions.
Yes. Let's talk about the distortions.
I'm so sorry, everyone. I went there. Yeah, it's around. If you think about somebody that literally is just now waking up, and they may have literally used their free will their entire life to go, I'm not doing that. That's mucky and murky, and I don't want to do it. All of a sudden, we'd said before about the distractions being removed. People are being faced with this stuff. And people are asking questions. They're asking questions of the media. They're asking questions of society. They're asking questions of all of these things and all of these components that's made who they believe to be who they are. And when you are potentially thrown into a global situation like we are right now, and you find yourself waking up and your free will hadn't wanted to do that, it can be a little bit more destructive than perhaps if you kind of just went through this normal route. What that's leading to, again, talking about collective energy, is a mass fear and projection and the lower frequency energy is so massively distorted by all of these fractals of people that's just flying off all over the place. So what was coming through quite prevalently in variant different BQH sessions was that there is a lot of distorted energy coming through right now. There's a lot of distorted information that's coming through right now, and actually be really careful, one, not to try and project too brightly because it's not clean out there, and two, withdraw as needed, because that sediment, if you like, and I'm using the word sediment because that came, a client actually said that in BQH, this sediment is kind of dropping and sitting, and that needs to clear before things are going to be completely pure or right again, I guess. And then more recently, there's also been mass stripping of past lives. So I'm just trying to think of a session that I've done in the last 2-3 weeks that hasn't involved a huge clearing of timelines and past lives, because as you said, it's like some people are getting to that point now, and I salute the people that are working their asses off right now, because you are doing phenomenal work. They are literally at the point where it's like every single thing that came before, the relevance of it, if it's not relevant, it's gone. Just, it's gone now, and it's stunning, absolutely stunning to see. And then I think the third thing massively that I spoke to you about, and you went, oh, that's coming up in my sessions too, was the mask.
Yes,
I've had so many clients talking about masks or removal of masks or how to leave the masks, and we've discussed it, haven't we? And I think you came up with it beautifully around how you felt that was within the energies and things of people right now.
I think what comes to mind, because I was seeing images of that, and I think ultimately this year is a massive year of truth, you know, truth being exposed to some of the deepest, darkest don't want to look at places, but I think it's necessary for individual and for collective. So if people aren't prepared to go and face the deepest aspects of themselves, then they can't truly heal and transcend. You know, those parts have to be highlighted and looked at and felt into and explored before true healing can take place. You know, it's no point in sort of putting a band-aid on it, and you know, because it'll always come back up. But it's really interesting, and I think a lot of things are coming into my mind, but I think, you know, if we look at the different layers of reality that are playing out, obviously those who are plugged into the 3D matrix, who are now just starting to wake up, that's a real shattering of truth, realizing that the reality out there that's being, you know, portrayed through media and through mainstream isn't actually a reality. It's a fabricated lie, you know. And I think that's very how do I say this? I think that's being reflected in a lot of people's lives, because I think a lot of truth is being exposed. Let's just say that a lot of truth is being exposed. And I think that sometimes, you know, that can be really painful, but it's a beautiful thing, because once truth is been illuminated, then people can grow and heal and evolve from that.
And yeah, and there's that element of you know, I can remember many years ago I used to talk about my different hats, and if I take my different hats and I actually apply them to masks, because I used to be quite the chameleon, because I genuinely didn't know who I was. Well, of course I didn't, because I was who I needed to be in any given situation. And ultimately I think that you know, as human beings, we are there's an expectation of how we perform in certain different places, and for me the mask is genuinely one of authenticity. You just take in all of the expectations, that, you know, of what you should do or should be, or all of that shit, and just throwing it away, and actually being able to look in the mirror and go, okay, I'm willing to see the perceived good, bad and ugly, because everything's perception. You know, maybe the stuff that you think is bad and ugly actually genuinely isn't, but to embrace it anyway. And it's truths. It's all about truths, and truths, like everything else, is something that potentially comes in drip form. There's a certain amount that you can take. It's like healing. And then you stop for a bit, and then there's a little bit more you can take, and then you stop for a bit. But it's just about being open to variant levels of self and variant levels of awareness, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I come back to this thing because in the very fleeting moments that clarity has been there and that real clear connection has been there, you know, the one thing that keeps I know, right? The one thing that keeps coming through to me is that, you know, 3D level of consciousness and embodiment, 5D, in between, 4D passage. 4D passage is always full of distortion because it's our initiation and rite of passage. And it's in those phases. And I got woken up to a message like this, like literally at 3 a.m. before I could even open my eyes. It was like, don't forget that you're in a simulation. Are you passing it? Or are you going to retake the test? You know what I mean? And so I always see that transitional phase of 4D, you know, as you go from one level of consciousness to the next. The 4D is really about unraveling what isn't truth and aligned to authenticity within self. And so that's the path that you go through. A simulation is the only way to describe it, where all your fears get presented to you through situations, through people, you know. And as you go into those initiations and you move past the fear and you go back to heart-centered space, back to love, you know, you pass the test, you move up an octave, you move up in frequency. And I think the best way to navigate these very confusing times is to eradicate navigating it through the lower conscious mind or thought patterns. Is the essence of really feeling into the heart space and feeling into what's right and what's authentic for you, and what, you know, resonates with your soul is the best way to navigate these times. I don't think that anything else is as powerful or as potent. So, you know, that's going to be really easy for some people and then not as easy for other people, because obviously getting into that heart space, if you haven't, you know, dealt with things like self-love, if you haven't dealt with things like forgiveness, and looked at, you know, past wrongdoings that you may have done to other people or you've experienced yourself, it brings up so much, and that has to be ciphered through to get into your heart space.
Yeah, and as you were talking, I'm actually really pleased you just said that at the end, because I was thinking I'm going to say something that's going to be really, really unpopular right now. But it's that whole thing of, you know, when we're talking again about I'm always very, very aware of, I genuinely don't believe that one thing is better than another thing. Everything is perception, and ultimately we choose our realities to a certain point. Now, when I say we choose our realities, I'm sure there's a whole bunch of people out there going through a whole load of hurting. There's a whole bunch of people that are in a dark night of the soul going, shut up, I'm not choosing this. I'm not saying you're choosing to hurt, and I'm not saying that anybody is choosing to actually feel pain or to feel that kind of level of despair and discomfort. However, from a soul level, yes, at some point you did choose that, because otherwise you wouldn't be doing it. And when we are first in those positions of clearing and removing and feeling everything we need to feel to shift, as you say, to then be able to start to learn to come to the heart space, there is no light. It doesn't feel like there's any light. And when I'm saying this, I've been there. I get it with my absolute heart. I get it. However, there will always be someone that can hold a light. There will always be someone that can help. There will always be somebody that can assist in making that transition easier, because not everything has to be as painful as we perceive it to be. There are always choices. And I think that's what I kind of wanted to say right now, is that we do get to a point whereby sometimes we can, I do it, I know you do it, we get sucked into something and we're swirling, and then we go, hang on a minute, I don't need to sit in that space, but we all do go there. And I think my big thing right now would be, let's use each other, let's use humanity, let's assist and guide each other in this process, because that lovingness and kindness and gentleness actually also enriches other people. It's a dual assistance, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. 100%. So what other themes have been coming up for you? Because I know that you did a couple of sessions. We've had a lot of really interesting syncs over the last few months. I know that you had a couple of sessions back to back that I was one of them, and then you had another session, a day on either side, and the identical information came through, which I love that. I love those synchronicities. Yeah. And we also went through a really weird experience where I was going through a really unpleasant experience, and that was reflective in the session real time in what you were going through with a different client. Had no awareness of it till days later when we came back and we were talking, and I said, I had this really unpleasant experience, this is what was going on, and your jaw dropped because you're like, you just described
I had this with a client. Yeah.
So let's dive into that and talk about that.
Yeah, so where to start? So at the beginning of this, and I think it was around the 25th of March that I did yours and another one back to back. And I mean, there's a lot of masculine information out there. And again, disclaimer, when I say masculine, I'm not just like calling out the guys, it's the masculine energy template. Yes, there will be a lot of actual men involved in that, because the masculine template is being completely disseminated. Basically, it's being just pulled apart and reconstructed. And if you look at how this whole current situation that we're in applies to the masculine in relation to the feminine, and again, let's use the energies, but let's also potentially look at gender. The distractions, sports, bars, clubs, places they can go with friends, gyms, I think a lot of women are, not as bothered. I found a lot of the feminine are not as bothered by the restrictions as the men are, because the men have been quite distracted from coming on board. And I am not having a go, I'm not digging anybody out, it's an energetic thing. What was coming up in sessions around counterparts and around the masculine template is that the masculines have been very complacent, and that free will has literally been a major problem in relation to where potentially things could be and where they currently are. And it feels like there's been a major deconstruct and collapsing and falling apart of that. So I guess just if anybody isn't aware of that, just be mindful of that when you're dealing with people, because I think some people, dependent on where their energy base lies, are going to be finding this a lot harder. But it is for a positive reason. It's almost like we can't interrupt with free will, but we can remove free will as much as is possible to get people on track. The other thing was around...
Can I just interject just before you go on? Because, this whole concept of free will versus divine will is something that's always been, back and forth in my mind, because, speak to me 5 years ago, speak to me 7 years ago, I was all about free will and free choice and decisions and manifesting my own reality, and I was always very, very good at that since a really young age. I kind of tapped into this power of being able to manifest and create whatever I needed in that moment. But hitting my ascension point made me look at it a little bit differently, and I want to clarify if this resonates for people, because I feel that there was a junction point where I chose my highest path and my calling and my service to humanity, and I feel like, well, I would have said from a dark night soul perspective, where's the free will? I don't have any, because I didn't ask this upon myself. All this destruction that's taking place in my life, I didn't manifest this, I didn't create this, so where's the free will in it? And so I do believe, from my own perspective, there is this choice point where we have our abrupt awakening and we kind of click onto a timeline of what I would like to call divine will, highest timeline, alignment with soul resonance. And I think a lot of the free will choices get taken or pulled from us at that point, because we've made that connection, that kind of click in. And I often joke to you, I said my free will is about the extent of, oh, should I have regular milk or soy milk with this cup of coffee? There are still choices, but anytime you venture too far off your path, you kind of get snapped back into place. And I do
get your ass kicked, basically.
Universal ass kick. And so that's how I perceive it, in terms of, it's not necessarily that free will is a bad thing, but I think when it's driven by a human level a lower level human ego consciousness, it's not necessarily in our highest soul expression. And I think when you get to a certain point, that's where sort of the divine comes in and takes place, and then things seem very, very unfair. And that's when you go through questioning everything, and you come out the other side and you see that without that experience, you couldn't get to where you're at.
I mean, as a disclaimer, I'd just like to say that in both of these sessions, they were not my words. That was from galactic councils and galactic teams that were basically saying free will and ego have literally just been an absolute nightmare as far as they're concerned. They didn't, it was never been contemplated how detrimental it would be to the bigger plan of Earth ascending and all of those kind of things. So when I'm doing that again, I'm just the messenger, don't shoot me.
And thank you for saying that. And it just sparked in my mind, because often, and honestly, these thoughts often, these are my 3 a.m. thoughts sometimes, because it's like this whole divine versus free will, but, back and forth. And when I say I don't necessarily believe in free will, that's my own experience. I do believe that there's many humans on this planet that have access to free will, but I think that if you're a starseed, a light worker, a twin that holds a high frequency, I think that your mission takes preference over everything else. And I think that...
Yeah, we didn't come here. Some of us didn't come here to just party and have fun, I'm afraid. The good thing is when you get on board, you can still party and have fun. You just have to do the mission part first.
First and foremost. So I don't know. I hope that helps if people are kind of battling with that and trying to make sense of all that. That's kind of my musings and thoughts about it from my own experience. And I think, when you get into manifestation, I think that that's more of an intuitive thing, because I know the way that I operate now, as opposed to before, where I would be in a state of confusion, in overthinking, oh, what should I do? Should I do this? Should I choose that path? And there's a lot of mental conflict. When you start to move into living from, let's say, a soul aligned space, you get a prior insight. Like, I know that, like, I'll be given an image and, like, go there, go do this. Like, it's sort of downloaded, and it's like, and then you go there and this magical thing happens. And it was like, did I manifest that? No, maybe it was just a precognitive function of me tapping into my intuition, knowing that that was about to take place. So, I mean, it's just perception, but that's my little spin on it. So sorry, go back to.
No. And again, I'm pleased that you've done that, because I am always very mindfully aware that the scope of people that watch your videos is very, very wide, very, very wide and varied. And as I said, there is no one thing that's better than the other. If literally somebody's just at this point kind of starting to wake up and question stuff, that is just as valid as somebody that's been doing this journey for 25 years and is working in a healing modality, because every single person, every single light has its place. However, when we're talking about sessions, obviously sometimes a lot of the information that's coming through, especially dependent on the clients that we're working with, if I'm working with your team, I'm getting some high intel from way beyond in the galactic realms, and I'm pleased that you've kind of explained that, because I can be the messenger as to what information I'm receiving. That doesn't necessarily mean that people are going to take it. So what I would say is that when there is information like that coming out, just sit with it. If it doesn't sit in you right, if you don't feel it, discard it. There is no need to, I feel no desire to preach anything. We're just simply sharing information that we're receiving.
100%.
Mm-hmm. So the other one,
yeah.
and I think, is that when you were talking about the entity with the that was I genuinely, so I'd not really had, especially around a BQH, I'd not necessarily dealt with entity attachment before.
That's normally my expertise.
Right. And I had a client book with me who has agreed to me being able to share this information, and went in, and there were this, she gave a very vivid explanation of what was there, what was going on, what it was there for. She had her team working phenomenally. Everything was very good. It was very powerful. Everything was cleared, removed, etc., etc., etc. But then when this was fed back between us, and we were like, holy shit, that was the same entity. Oh, okay. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I kind of want to let you feel that, so you can explain that better, because I'm just very aware that there'll be people going, oh, what?
So just to break it down, this is something that's been, thankfully it's really eased off in the last few weeks, but it really flared up for a good month or so, and probably one of the most common things that I was seeing and experiencing was entity attachment and psychic attack. Similar effect, but different, comes from a different source. So entity is anything that's non-physical, that basically metals, comes from astral realm, fourth dimensional realm. It's non-physical. Can be someone who has deceased but not fully crossed over and gone back home. And quite often a lot of non-human type. The vast amount of things that I've seen in sessions of entity attachment. But basically, if you're not familiar with it, basically what happens is it kind of latches into your energetic field, and the ramifications of that is a lot of confused thinking, a lot of intrusive thoughts, can go to the very depth extreme of it being like suicidal thoughts, really detrimental attack on self-worth and self-esteem. And ultimately I like to view it from, it's not a topic that I like to talk about, because obviously there's sort of a lot of negative connotation to it, but ultimately if you're looking at it from a higher perspective, you can look at that as a gift. You can really look at having that experience as a gift to step more into your own sovereignty, and into your own personal power, and to overcome and transform. And I truly, there's a process and technique that I go through in helping clear that for people. And it's like black and white, it's transformational. Some people can come in with just being heavily depressed, lost zest for life, having suicidal thoughts or tendencies, and just through one session in clearing that energy form that's been attached, and sometimes it's been there for most of their life. They instantly feel a lift and feel better. And then the other form is psychic attack. So the difference is that it has similar effects, like very intrusive thoughts, can impact the physical body, can make you very sick, can create, a lot of accident-prone sort of what's the word I'm looking for, paranormal experiences, things like that. But the difference between these psychic attack is coming from someone who's physically incarnate, so someone who is projecting negative thoughts towards you for whatever reason, a disliking, anger, jealousy, those type of lower level, and quite often with that you will get you can quite often get repetitive images of that person coming in, so you kind of know where that's coming in from. And so there's been a lot of that energy, or there was a lot of that energy going, which was another reason for me not to film for a while, because it was like night after night, and then I would have a little break, and so going into those experiences or working with those clients, trying to clear those energies is very, very heavy. It's not something that I actively promote. It's just something that I've done for about 15 years and became very, very good at in the process of. And, it's absolutely delightful, because through this last month, I've had the privilege of running 2 courses of practitioners teaching my technique, and I've been able to train people up to help do this type of work, because this is something I don't want to stay in long term, even though I can and will. I'll always heed the call. But and so there was one night that I was going through clearing some of this really heavy energy, which came through, and I kept clearing the room, and then all of a sudden I got this image of this energy that was coming through. And when I was describing it to Jo, the exact energy was what she was clearing in her session. So I know,
didn't want to go.
No, it was very locked in. And this stuff is very real, whether you're sensitive to it or not. Generally, entities come through, how do they come about? It can come through when someone's experienced trauma, and that kind of weakens the energy field. And so that's why, people can carry them for a long period of time and not know, and just think that is the everyday normal by having, intrusive thoughts and all that sort of stuff, low self-esteem. Other places that come through is substance abuse, which also weakens the aura, or the auric field. And probably the most prevalent one is intimate relationships. If you're, opening yourself up energetically to someone in that, one of the only times that your energy actually expands and merges with another is when you're having intimate relationship with someone. So if they have energy and entity attachment, of course it's going to you've just opened yourself wide up, and so
I just want to say, this is a whole nother level of energy hygiene, guys.
It really is. And I think, with the exclusion of divine partnership, you'll see that a lot of people going through their, ascension awakening will choose celibacy, because they understand, once you've gone through that awakening, you understand how precious your life force energy is, and you don't want to intimate or intermingle that with just anyone. It is really sacred. It is. It's very, very sacred. And
no, I totally agree. I mean, I'd just like to say, obviously, this one experience that I know that you had, and it was very similar. Well, it was the same. I mean, it was the same.
It was identical, and it was at the exact same time.
Right. And the funny thing is, it's like, a lot of people might not understand how a VQH works, but at the end of the day, people will go where they go and have the experience that they have. It's not directed or dictated by me in any way, shape or form. So the fact that this one particular client ended up in this particular space, and that was her experience, was not by any way, shape or means driven by me. I can facilitate everything she needs in that space, but I haven't put her there, you know. And that particular one was, I mean, it was a bugger. It didn't want to leave. Like, it took a lot of work. And she said to me afterwards, I think for the next day or two, she felt like she'd had surgery. You know, it really was a massively intense situation. However, off the back of, as Alicia said, you know, I work with Alicia. It's no surprise. She's obviously been teaching me. I then have done another session, and some of them are genuinely just happy to go. Like, they're just like, oh, you found me at last, send me away. I don't even want to be here anymore. So it's not, obviously be mindful, but don't be fearful.
No, absolutely not. And it's not to take away, because obviously those symptoms can sound very much the similar that we would go through within our own process, you know. So it's really discernment to whether it is your own process, or if you're having or under the influence of a different energy form that can be, you know, quickly and easily kind of transformed. And I have to say, it really took me by surprise, because this type of stuff is not something that I've experienced or dealt with in my own personal life for years, you know. And I joke about it, you know, through my various years of psychic development and all that, you know, I was always an open vessel. And I think the brighter your light is, the more susceptible you are. And I think that's another reason, just to add in, why a lot of us are being either guided to or can't access our fullest potential and light at this time, is because as the cleanup's happening on the third dimensional plane with all the corruption that's being exposed and dealt with, you know, you've got to look into that on the astral level. There's a massive clear up that's going on as well. And I think a lot of people, not just myself, have been a part of cleaning up and clearing a lot of that, and being sort of intertangled, interwoven into some of those heavier energies. And it's been like literally in quicksand most days. And just to maintain your own energy levels, I had to pull back to only doing one session a day, which is something that I haven't done in a long time, but it was all I could maintain. Thankfully now the shift has come, you know, and I'm back in my full sort of capacity. But, you know, it was floundering for quite some time there, and dealing with, you know, a lot of unpleasant energies. And also, you know, I think one thing that I learned through this experience is that no matter how, you know, clean your energy hygiene is, and how you work on your own frequency, some of these energy forms can come in through to you through the people who are closest to you, you know. So the ones that you would least suspect, just having, you know, a connection with someone. And, you know, in those extreme circumstances, you know, in stepping away is the most important thing that you can do at that time, you know, in extreme circumstances. So yeah, it's it's been wild to say the least.
Yeah. And I mean, once again, I mean, for everything that you've been going through, Alicia, hats off to you. Like, massive amounts of clearing and stuff, but also for every single person that sees this, that's navigating their own reality, because at the end of the day, it's going to look differently to every single one of us. You know, even if two people live in the same house, their experience of what's going on is going to feel different. And I feel like there appears to be less projection going on out there right now, so that's a massive shift that's taken place recently, because at the beginning everybody was projecting stuff, you know, well, listen, this, they're doing this and that person's doing that and blah blah blah, and that seems to have eased a lot, which for me would indicate that actually now there's more, as opposed to the projection, people are having introspection, you know, they're actually looking in. And for those people that are doing it, that are working past pain, fear, trauma, shadow elements, child elements, past life shit, ancestral shit, maybe you're living with somebody you can't stand at this moment in time, and you're realizing that, holy shit, whenever I was feeling bad, it was actually that person over there, and now I'm stuck with them. What am I you know, there's so much that's coming up, and for every single person that's actively confronting that and not running from it, just, you are amazing. You guys are all part of changing and enlightening everybody's futures. I salute you all.
Well said. I second that. Thank you, Jo. Thank you, Jo. There was something else. Oh, I started saying it before, and we kind of got sidetracked, but you know, every time that moment of clarity hit, it was like, there's so much distortion in the field right now that nothing, you can't really take anything as real until things settle again into a newer space, which thankfully for me happened, you know, a few days ago. But for now, you know, we'll wait and see what happens, taking it every day as it comes. But it certainly feels like things have backed off a lot on those levels. But I was having a discussion with a soul brother of mine, and he was saying that there's this kind of insider information that's come out, or looking to come out, we'll have to wait and see, from the NSA and from NASA, that Earth is currently moving through a space in the planet, in the galaxy, that is, I think that the words were warping the nature of reality. And as soon as this, I'm like, I've been saying that for weeks, you know, because with all the timeline glitches and the looping of timelines, and, you know, that's where you kind of, when you're out of it, but when you're in that really weird space where felt like you've been pushed into a pressure cooker, all these intense emotions are coming up, you know, all these crazy thoughts, and then you come through that and you're like, whoa, what was that? You know, that was a time portal that put you into some weird ass alternate reality that wasn't yours. You've just come back. And that's why at the moment, you know, meditation, connecting with nature, doing creative arts, you know, focusing on what's most important, you know, how you can assist your own, you know, community, humanity, you know, is so important right now to keep us in and not getting pulled off into like crazy wormholes at the moment. Sorry.
Right at the beginning, when I said, you know, we get to choose our reality, I kind of want to just go back to what you've just said right there, because it's batshit fucked uppery going on out there right now. And yes, there are certain things that we need to go through and we need to feel, but actually, if we can get to a point of just sitting there going, this shit's crazy, that's a really good space to be in. Because all I kept hearing in my head as you were doing that is, for anybody that's watched The Matrix, there is no spoon. Is the spoon straight? Is it bendy? Is there no spoon? I mean, right now, I wouldn't like to say whether or not there is a spoon or not, because I'm just kind of sitting to wait until we get out of this phase, and then I'll look and go, oh yeah, there is, and it's bent. But right now, I don't know.
being able to stand back and be in that observer mode, I think, is highly important, and not sort of merging into any reality, I think is really, especially
wormholes. You don't want to stay in a wormhole.
Yeah, no. Especially on social media, and you can, I don't know, you experience, I know I experience it either on social media or in certain interactions, and it, like, you momentarily just realize, whoa, that person's in a whole different reality that's so vastly different to mine. And there's this kind of like, I don't know what you call it, this moment where you kind of have this realization, or I don't know what to call it.
Engage or disengage?
Yeah, it's sort of like this realization of like, whoa, that's, you know, that's a different reality. That's um, and you know, everyone is living. There's billions of different realities, you know, all simultaneously interacting with one another at any given moment on this planet. And
It's
you know, I
a
think it.
vast simulation of life.
Oh, now we're going down some rabbit hole. But anyway,
I'll stop.
um, but so you're doing sessions right now, Jo? You're currently
I
doing.
am, yep. I'm still, yep. I'm working, plugging away. Anybody that is, anybody that yeah, wishes to work with me or wishes to look at different parts, then yep, I'm working.
Awesome, awesome. So I'll put the details down in the description box below if you feel that guided to wanting to connect with Jo and book a session if you're going through, hit a hard spot and you need some assistance, support. Another thing that came to mind that has been quite prevalent in a lot of my sessions, there's been a lot of like bloodline clearing that's been happening. Bloodline and around a lot of karmic clearing, but also around addictions, distorted intimacy issues. That's been really prevalent as well. You know, very base and sacral related clearing has been quite prevalent. So it's just, people are going through a lot, and I think one thing that comes to mind in the session that I had with you, I don't remember it, so thankfully you took notes, because the file got corrupted, so the videos, you know, can't be accessed. But just this whole phase of people needing to access and heal some of their deepest traumas and wounds because they're still holding on to karmic patterns, and the amount of light that is coming through from, I keep getting around end of June, July onwards, you know, onto the planet, is to be able to prepare their bodies to be able to assimilate that amount of light that's coming through, which of course is going to be beautiful. It's going to start to bring in new I feel like it's just going to what's the word I'm looking for, just flush everything out, reboot, reset. So, you know, take this time now if you feel called to, and do the deepest excavation that you need in preparation for that.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but was that the session whereby it came up that a lot of people that have potentially done this before, they've been through, I don't know if we're looking at Lemuria or, you know, other different civilizations, etc., that are holding stuff from when it went wrong, which is impacting their ability to be able to completely stand in full sovereignty this time round. I understand that again might be a bit woo for a lot of people, but if you do feel an affinity to any of those times, or if you are somebody that feels like you've got a lot of anxiety around potential shifts that the earth might be making right now, it may well be worth exploring that, because I do believe that come up, didn't it?
Yeah. Lemuria, Atlantis, ancient Egypt,
Yeah.
just to name a few. So I mean, this sort of started out back in February, and it's still sort of percolating. You can feel that energy in the air, of that sort of feeling like everything's lost, you know, not seeing any hope, or, you know, feeling like Earth is going to go into a destructive downward spiral. And so, and a lot of people may not even be, you know, aware of those soul memories, and just be having those feelings. So, you know, that's something else to explore, whether, you know, it is being a part of being in those civilizations and having those experiences. But yeah, no, that's definitely been a big theme, massive theme. So Anything else that you can think of before we look at wrapping up?
No, I think, yeah, no, I think I just, the one thing that always just keeps coming back to me is that, you know, both you're saying, I'm saying, other people that are running sessions are saying, there's some really deep clearing work that's going on right now. And if I can liken that to when I did a lot of my clearing at the beginning, I know we've said on previous ones, maybe 8 months ago, 9 months ago, something that might have taken a year is now possible in 6 months. The kind of shit that I'm seeing that's being stripped, something that may have taken a year now feels like on this variant, woohoo, we're on, might take a few weeks. Like the level of gunk and clearing that's going on, it feels really, really colossal. So if you are in a space where you want to do that, like really utilize these opportunities, I feel like, because it feels like there is this is a mass shift out.
Excavation is the word that keeps coming to mind.
Yeah, digging up the bones.
Yeah, I think that's it. I'm sure there's so much more, but I just kind of want to put it to you guys, and you know, if there is particular questions that you have, any topics that you would like us to cover, hopefully we're going to come on and do some more regular updates of just different things that we're noticing and picking up that's coming through, awarenesses and observations, in hope that it's helpful and supportive to you guys. So if you have anything that you would like us to explore, you know, feel free to drop in comments in the comment section, and we can pick that up, you know, in a few days or a week, and do it all again. So nice to be back here. Hope you've all been well. You know, just thank you to all our followers and subscribers, and thank you for likes and shares and all that stuff. If you feel called to share this video, if you think it's going to be helpful for someone, please do. And yeah, looking forward to bringing out a lot of content to help you navigate these transitional times. So thank you once again.
Thank you to Miss Alicia, because you are always such a huge bringer of light to so many people, and I don't think many people get the opportunity to thank you for that. So on behalf of everybody watching, thank you.
Thank you, Jo. Likewise. And thank you all for the work that you do, you know, each and every one of you. That's what's helping the planet go through this process right here. So with that, much love, and we will connect with you soon. Bye.
Bye.